question will just be about
Another water
yourself, so
bottle.
it's easy. Okay.
Perfect. I love talking about myself. That's my favorite thing to do.
It's a little,
All
it's
right.
like sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's weird, right?
Yeah. All right, man. Let's kick it.
All right, here we go. Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the second episode of AG Associates' new podcast series, The Healing Edge. We hope to answer one simple but powerful question. What if behavioral health treatments could evolve as rapidly as the issues themselves? In each episode, we'll explore emerging treatments to complex behavioral health challenges, from post-traumatic stress to suicide prevention to substance use recovery, trauma, and beyond. Our mission is to highlight what's working both in the US and globally, bring visibility to the innovative and unconventional strategies that are changing lives today, and we'll also dive into the role of policy, public-private collaboration, and access, particularly through the Departments of Defense, Veterans Affairs, and Health and Human Services, and other leading institutions. We're hoping that this is not just a podcast, but a conversation for those seeking new answers, because we think traditional solutions aren't working for everyone. I'm your host, Chris Gonzalez, and I'm the president of AG Associates. For 17 years, AG has been helping clients define where the programs are going through strategy and implementation planning services, monitor programmatic success, and make data-informed decisions through data analysis and visualization, and engage groups across the country from the federal level all the way to local communities with our stakeholder engagement services. We've worked on a wide range of topics from quality of life programs to mental health and suicide prevention, and we've established a military, veteran, and family center of excellence to maximize the impact of research with the efforts of public and private programs. I've served 17 years in the Marine Corps with deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. I've authored multiple leadership pieces about mental health, community health, and post-traumatic stress. I'm the associate producer of Bastards Road, a film about a Marine's recovery as he walked across the country to reconnect with his fellow Marines and parents of his fallen friends. And we are glad you're here. Subscribe, follow along, and join us for each episode as we rethink what healing can look like and who gets access to it. Today's episode will explore the application of psychedelic-assisted therapies for treating mental health and substance use issues. This includes things like ketamine, psilocybin, ibogaine, and others. Having said that, I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. Sam J. Peterson is a former U.S. Army Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician who turned his own post-deployment struggles into a mission to heal others. As co-founder of MindSpot Denver and Patriot Power Up, and founder of nonprofit Invictus Project, he pioneered data-driven protocols that blend TMS, ketamine infusion, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and specialized counseling. These programs have already helped hundreds of veterans and first responders to overcome traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety, positioning Peterson as a leading voice in innovative and community-centered mental health care for those who serve and protect. Sam and I first met at a Veterans Business Conference for the Institute for Veteran and Military Families, and I'm really excited to jump into our conversation. So let's get
Yeah,
started.
man. Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to have you. It's great to explore this, and as you know, we've had two really good in-depth conversations about it. I've got some in the way of optimism, and I've got some, of course, in the way of pessimism, and we'll jump into that today. So my first question to you is, you know, this topic is I've watched it for quite some time, probably for a couple of years now in the veteran space. It's of course a very hot topic. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit more about not just the veteran space, but in general, treatment in general. Before we jump into all the content, I want to hear about you and how you got started and how you came into this world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how I got into mental health was because of my own pain and being an explosive ordnance disposal technician in the Army. One of the things they don't tell you is how high the suicide rate is. And that's because of the consistent and repetitive traumatic blasts that we're constantly engaging with when we're out on demolition ops or we're doing explosive breaching or we're dealing with an IED. we are constantly exposed to these blast waves that are tearing through our neurons and causing a ton of damage. So, I got to where I am today because I've lost a lot of friends to suicide. And what we found through all the work that we've done over the past almost a decade now is that the traditional establishment, the traditional treatments, especially for TBI and PTSD, really don't get at the root cause of the issues that are going on in the brain. And just very succinctly, there is a runaway inflammatory process that happens in the brain with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and TBI that is just simply not addressed by talk therapy and medication management.
Thanks for that. You know, one of the things I remember most about you is even just when we first met is your passion for helping veterans, especially because that's obviously where you and I share commonalities. Can you talk us through maybe a couple of success stories? Because I remember a couple of good ones. So, talk us through a couple of success stories, where it started, where it is now, and the progression.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind the most is uh, a good friend of mine. His name's Rich. He was a recon Marine, and actually, to back up a little bit, everybody knows someone like this. Have you ever met somebody who has fallen off the trauma tree and just hit every single branch on the way down with their face? That was this guy. So, struggled with substance abuse, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and TBI from getting hit by a grenade and a rocket during an ambush in Fallujah where he lost his best friend. Like the had a very tragic backstory, prior to that, very, very abusive home, ended up in the foster system, almost starved to death as a kid, then gets into the Marine Corps, finally finds his brotherhood, finds his people, and during, midway through their first deployment, Second Battle of Fallujah, kicks in a door and there's 17 Al Qaeda insurgents pointing AKs and other machine guns right at the door. His best friend was the first one to make entry. He lived just long enough to turn around, throw Rich out the door, and then sprint on the inside, like the inside wall, to pull fire away from the doorway so the rest of his squad mates didn't catch a bullet. Obviously, it cost him his life. And so he was suffering significantly with a panoply of issues. Wasn't sleeping. His relationships were going to hell. Was in a very, very toxic marriage. Just the panoply of everything that a veteran deals with was concentrated into his life. And we were able to put him through the Patriot Power Up program where we used the combination of ketamine infusion therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and transcranial magnetic stimulation. And that was at the end of 2024. Uh, or sorry, the end of 2023. And since then, he's completely turned his life around. His depression and anxiety scores and his PTSD scores plummeted immediately. Like we reached full symptom remission within 2 weeks. And then it's been smooth sailing since then. Now he has a new job, a new telecom job, climbing cell phone towers. He remarried, has a wonderful life, and lives on a horse farm, on the backside of Pikes Peak here in Colorado. So, stories like that really get me passionate about this work and particularly about these kinds of treatment protocols because you can see the transformation so fast. And that's one of the biggest problems with this traditional medical establishment. It's suffer, 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 try something new, suffer, 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 try something new, suffer, suffer, suffer. Like that, dumb way to do it.
So if you wouldn't mind, for that particular instance, you had mentioned a couple of things. For the layperson who's not in this world, talk a little bit about what some of those treatments did, and how they got him to that place, please.
Absolutely. So, what we do, and kind of back to the psychedelics conversation, is we start with ketamine infusion therapy. Now, ketamine is one of the most important drug discoveries of the 21st century. It is one of a class of drugs that is actually very good for your brain and has a lot of benefits, especially when it's used responsibly. So ketamine does a couple of really key things when we're talking about treating PTSD, TBI, and depression. The first thing it does is it downregulates inflammation in the brain. So it attacks the inflammatory process that's going on in the brain that's present in all of these veterans who are suffering. So we're able to take those symptoms down a couple of pegs immediately. So we give them that relief. It also increases neuroplasticity, and that's a fancy way of saying that your neurons branch out and create new connections. That's how we form habits. So we're supercharging your ability to form new habits, to think in new ways, to change your behaviors. Then we add in the transcranial magnetic stimulation, because I'm sure as we'll talk about, neuroplasticity is not a good or a bad thing. You have to focus it, you have to give it a focal point. So what TMS is, transcranial magnetic stimulation, it is an FDA approved treatment for major depressive disorder that is also indicated for anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Or sorry, anxiety, it's FDA approved for depression. It's also indicated for PTSD and anxiety. Excuse me. So what this technology is, it's an MRI coil, and that we place that MRI coil on the head, and it creates a magnetic field under the surface of your scalp. And that magnetic field is now in your brain tissue, and it's tricking your neurons into clustering more densely in a network where we're treating. And why that's important is because in the case of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, if you were to just look at the brain, and this is pretty broad strokes, if you were to look at the brain of these individuals, what you would see is an underactive prefrontal cortex and an overactive hindbrain. So, like your amygdala, for instance, is firing more than we want it to. And the reason that is because your prefrontal cortex, one of its main jobs is to tell your limbic brain, that hindbrain, to shut the hell up. And if it doesn't have enough neural density, it's not able to do that. It doesn't have a loud enough megaphone to tell those noisy neighbors downstairs to shut the hell up. So we use that combination, the ketamine and the TMS, increase that neuroplasticity, give your brain a focal point. Hey, this is where I want you to grow. This is where I want you to cluster. So it starts doing that. And then the last piece of this puzzle is that process is very energy intensive. We're asking your cells to do a lot of heavy lifting. We're asking, these cell bodies to reach out and create new connections out of nothing. So to create that extra energy, we use hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And hyperbaric is where you get into a chamber gets sealed. We increase the pressure in the chamber by pumping room air in, and then you breathe in concentrated oxygen while you're at pressure. That forces oxygen into your blood plasma, which allows your cells to create more ATP. So now we've got an energy surplus, we've got increased neuroplasticity, and we've got a vector for that neuroplasticity. And when you use all of these things at the same time, we've seen incredible results.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. I That's actually probably the most articulate way I've ever heard it. And our goal for this is really to play it, but for the layperson to hear and to understand why people are so passionate about that. So I think you did a great job articulating. Hopefully, people can understand some of the ways that the brain works and how those things work together. It's fascinating. I find it fascinating. So let's see. Um, I know we've discussed this one a lot. In the veteran community, we've got people from all walks of life. For your case study, you had mentioned a person with trauma who came into the military, and then it kind of also compounded as he continued his journey in the Marine Corps. Uh, we've got a wide range. Some have seen intense combat and intense exposure to blasts and things like that for traumatic brain injury, and those who haven't. I got nothing against those who haven't, but it's just not the same. So my question to you is, how do you know if someone is the right candidate for the types of things you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, it really all comes down to clinical decision making and making sure that you have a thorough assessment on the way in. Just because someone hasn't been in combat doesn't mean that they haven't dealt with trauma. I mean, I'm sure from your time in the Marine Corps, and certainly with my time in the Army, uh, we found out that most of us are just BT male strippers with extra daddy issues. So we've all got a trauma background. That's why we joined the organization in the first place. Because if everyone had a great upbringing and, parents that had a whole bunch of money, we'd probably all be going to Harvard right now instead of humping around a rucksack. So, we don't really discriminate in that way, combat vet versus non-combat vet. Because like here in the clinic, we see people all the time that have trauma from all walks of life. So it's not, I wouldn't say that the type of trauma or like the type of neglect or the type of attachment disorder really makes someone more or less qualified to engage with these therapies. It's more, something that would disqualify someone would be like schizoaffective disorder. So you have schizophrenia in your family. We don't want to touch that because we might activate, something latent and throw someone into a psychotic break. That'd be terrible. So that's just one example. Or, if someone has by the wrong version of bipolar, like TMS could be a contraindication. So it really just comes down to doing a really thorough clinical intake and making sure that there aren't contraindications to what we're doing so that we can ensure that everything that we are providing to our patients is done in a safe manner.
Thanks. In terms of that clinical intake or that screening, what does that look like?
It's an hour and a half long clinical screening, and then we do neuropsychiatric exams. So that's a take home, computer based exam where we can measure how well your brain is performing.
Nice.
And then, oh yeah,
So
and
if
then
people,
we're also we're
good.
also getting into blood testing, and I'm hoping to bring EEG into the clinic as well. So get a picture of the brain, get a picture of what's going on in the body from the bloodstream, clinical intake, and a neuropsychiatric exam. So you get a pretty comprehensive picture about what's going on.
Gotcha. Have you found when people complete that a high percentage would qualify for the treatment?
Oh yeah. Normally, if people are coming to us, they already
Gotcha.
know that
Yeah.
they have a problem.
Okay. Cool. Uh, Not cool, but thank you for that. Uh, so one of the things that I mean, I've heard ketamine a lot. I've heard you use the term ketamine a lot. You use the others with the TMS and the hyperbaric chamber HBOT. I hear that commonly referred to. Uh, Tell me about some of the effectiveness either you've applied or you've seen with other substances. I know Ibugaine's one. I hear a lot of, the Navy SEAL influencers talk about Ibogaine in Mexico. What are some other substances you've heard of and, some of the pros and cons?
Yeah. So psilocybin's a big one. Here in Colorado, we can do psilocybin clinically. It's legal here, as long as you're fully licensed. But I think just from an efficacy perspective, we talked about neuroplasticity, right? So with ketamine, you get about 72 hours of really highly upregulated neuroplasticity. So we got 72 hours to really dig into the work and get someone past those walls that they've been struggling with. One of the really cool things about psilocybin is that neuroplasticity window is much wider. And with ibogaine, it's even wider. So instead of 72 hours, a hero's dose of psilocybin has been shown, I believe Stanford did this research, and they found that neuroplasticity window is 3 weeks. So you've got 3 weeks to really dive into the work. And then with ibogaine, it's even longer. It's a couple months. And we people still don't understand fully how ibogaine works. There's talking to like Ambio Life and a couple other big proprietors of ibogaine therapy. It seems that it interacts with a bunch of different neuroreceptors simultaneously to bring on the effect that it does. Whereas psilocybin interacts with the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor. So, as far as pros and cons go, um, with psilocybin, the kind of pro is you get that elongated neuroplasticity window. It can also be microdosed, uh, pretty damn safely. It's very non-toxic, so the drug itself is not going to kill you. We measure that by what's called an LD50 to ED50 ratio, the lethal dose to effective dose ratio. So with psilocybin, it's 1 to 1,000. So you would have to intake an amount of psilocybin from whole mushrooms that would kill you. You would have to burst your stomach open, eating over 40 pounds of dried mushrooms. Yeah, you'd have to work at it. You know, one of the cons to using psilocybin for TBI, great example, with traumatic brain injuries, there's a ton of inflammation going on in the brain. Imagine like an electrical system that has a short in it. That inflammation is not allowing electricity to flow very well just because it doesn't have enough energy to. If you were to give someone a hero's dose of psilocybin and they have a significant traumatic brain injury, you stand a very good chance, especially if set and setting are not very tightly controlled, to causing a dissociative panic attack because you're increasing the amount of electricity that the brain's creating by several orders of magnitude, and you're passing that electricity through a short. So it doesn't take a whole lot to derail that experience, and that's where we get into this this very important idea, in fact, that neuroplasticity is a neutral phenomenon. It is neither good nor bad. It is about what you do with that neuroplasticity. That is why set and setting is so important. And that is why these substances need to be treated with an extreme amount of care because people with trauma, when you opened up Pandora's box, a bunch of crazy crap can come out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned the word setting, so I'm going to transition to this next question. One, I've seen you putting a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn about some of the dangers of, uh, I guess, imposter drugs or commercial drug type things. My biggest fear about this entire topic is that it becomes like opioids. And I think of opioids started with a lot of good data that says, helping people to manage pain. And here we are today with a lot of negative side effects because it wasn't administered in the way that it could have been. So I guess my big question to you is how is this, what are the keys to safe administration, safe setting?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought in opiates to this conversation because this is something that people really need to understand. There is a huge difference between a psychedelic drug that is serotonergic in in its pharmacology, so activates serotonin receptors, versus a dopaminergic, activates dopamine receptors sort of drug. When we talk about drugs with high addictive potential, opiates and amphetamines, cocaine, we are on the dopaminergic side of the equation. We are dealing with that instant reward pathway. That tends to be very, very reinforcing and therefore very habit forming versus serotonergic. Serotonergic drugs are not an immediate reward pathway. It is more of like a well-being pathway. So the propensity for abuse is much, much lower just from a pharmacological standpoint with psychedelics. So there's that. And then, you know, it really just comes down to creating, and I'm going to use the word ritual here, because I think if we look back at how long these have been in our culture, in our cultures collectively, it's insane. They go back thousands and thousands of years, and they're always done in the under the framework of a ritual. So in medicine, we need to take that in a bit. So, like with the Natural Medicine Act in Colorado, it requires that you have a pre-coaching session. So someone comes in to your office, they sit down, they get coached on how this is going to go. We talk about what they want to get into, what walls they're trying to break down in their psyche, really set that intention. Boom, there's your set. Then they come in, they have the experience, they do the drug with a licensed facilitator who's watching them the whole time in an environment where we can intervene if something's going wrong, and really be there to be supportive through that entire process. So they have that experience, boom, minds open, they go see the universe, they go talk to their dead relatives. These are the kind of things that are reported by folks in these experiences. And then one of the most important pieces is the integration. So you have this mind-blowing, crazy experience, increased neuroplasticity. Let's just say for this instance, it was positive. And now we need to go back and we need to instantiate all of that positive work. We need to give it a vector. We need to drive it forward into behaviors. And that's what makes the difference. There's the addictive piece. Perfect example, ketamine. Like if, and I think this gets into just addiction in general, the idea that something has just chemical hooks that, oh my God, you're going to try this for the first time and then you're hooked on it for life is kind of asinine. Then every single person who had surgery ever would be addicted to opiates. Why is that not the case? Because there's a difference in the medical ritual of receiving that medicine versus, I get a bottle of pills, and anytime I want to feel a certain way or I don't like the way I'm feeling, I can just reach for that biochemical output. So there's a big difference there, and creating the proper medical ritual around how these substances are administered. That's something we do very well here with the administration of ketamine. And hey, knock on wood, but nobody's become addicted to ketamine after they've done a series for mental health here.
Thank you. Colorado is a great example of, from what I see, a forward-thinking state. I do worry at times, perhaps too forward-thinking, if the certain things like ketamine becomes allowable for recreational use instead of just in a controlled setting. Again, pros and cons, but just looking at some of the previous trends in our country. Uh, I guess the next question is, what are the pros and cons to states kind of doing their own thing around this topic, in your opinion?
Well, I would say let's start with the cons. Um, a lack of a lack of funding to programs and a lack of structure can create black markets. You can end up with individuals just kind of doing their own thing, um, and creating non-safe environments. That's the reason we have regulations is because of the bottom 25% who are going to go and do this in a non-responsible way and create negative outcomes. So, negative patient outcomes, God forbid somebody, dies from something like this. Ibogaine's a perfect example. You know, if if there's not a good enough intake and someone has a cardiac issue, ibogaine could very easily kill them. So, perfect example of why there needs to be regulation as to entry points with that specific drug. Um, as far as pros, the rest of the country gets to see what works and what doesn't work. Oregon's doing it a little bit differently than Colorado. So we're getting real-time feedback on what's good and what's not. So again, like perfect example, let's go back to Oregon and drug policy as a whole. Oregon tried to recreate what Switzerland did by legalizing all drugs. They missed a really, really key component. The reason Switzerland doesn't have, a drug overdose problem anymore is because they took all the money that they were using for policing and they stopped doing that and they opened up a bunch of treatment centers that were adjacent to safe administration sites. So someone who was having issues, was addicted to these drugs, could come into a safe clinic, get a medical grade dose of insert drug here, be monitored by a nurse and a physician while that was happening. And then if they wanted to engage with addiction counseling or vocational rehabilitation, they could. That's why that program was really successful in that country. Oregon just went, oh, maybe it's just that we're spending too much money trying to criminalize this, and they decrimmed everything, and it had the opposite effect. So, that's a perfect, kind of a perfect example of a pro is, and it's not a pro for everybody, don't get me wrong, but we get to see what works and what doesn't. And when someone skips a step, like Oregon did with decrim, it's very, very obvious where that blind spot and where that failure point was.
Thank you. That's actually a very pretty good way to look at it. Flip side to that question, what are the pros and cons of potentially a national strategy or national federal programs for this as well?
Yeah, pros, creating ubiquitous access for people who meet clinical criteria, creating structure around that to ensure safety, and and I would say the cons of any system, like creating any federalized system, are abuse. You're going to have people like gaming the system. There will be contractors who don't color within the lines like they're supposed to. And there's also a big piece of psychedelic medicine that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is that it's not just let the drug do the work. Here at MindSpot, perfect example is how we administer ketamine. So there's a there is a kind of zeitgeist here that the drug is what's doing everything. That's not really true. It is both the drug that's causing this physiological effect, but it's also the patient's lived experience. So here we maximize for that lived experience. So I've got one room that, the whole wall's a projector. We can put anything up that we want for our patients to like more visuals. And then we've got a vibroacoustic room where I've got a vibroacoustic table that has subwoofers that go all the way down your spine, and that really it it sends you even without drugs. That thing is pretty amazing. But you can create these really, really powerful experiences for people. They can like I just talked to a firefighter yesterday who went and talked to his dead grandfather, like you know, eyes closed, eye mask on, 4K head movie talking to your dead relative. That's a really powerful experience. And then when they come out of that experience, we use AI art to capture that, print it out, and give it to them. Now, that's an example of how you create the optimal, meaningful experience to take advantage of the physiological effect. So the con side is losing the magic, for lack of a better term. There is so much we don't understand about what these drugs do to the brain and how that interconnectivity that happens with all these drugs, uh, how what that produces in the brain. We're still learning. So the con would be losing the magic, man.
That makes a lot of sense to me, especially as you get places to commercialize it and it becomes bigger and less regulated. Again, makes a ton of sense. Appreciate you breaking it down like that. I love how you break it down very, you know, in very,
Barney style.
yeah, Barney style. I always forget to use, I don't like using that term because the non-veterans don't know what that was. Step by step, very easy to understand. Last question is really around the perception and public relations side of ketamine and psychedelics. Seems like there's a lot of people making noise about it, but it still has somewhat of a public relations problem. So, in your opinion, what would be the best approach to changing the PR and the perception of the American public?
I think it starts with education. You know, you and I have a little bit of an age gap, but do you remember the Dare Lion? Well, in the 90s, in the 90s and early 2000s, we had the Dare Lion. It was a little, don't do drugs, kids. Like everything's gonna scramble your brain. We had Reefer Madness. We had this zeitgeist of creating fear around these things instead of understanding. And that is a bad way to go about anything. Just as the data shows that abstinence-based programs in schools don't prevent teen pregnancy, contraceptive based programs do. Let's peel away the layers here and let's teach people about these things. Hey, this is what this substance is. This is what it looks like. This is what it does. This is who would be a good candidate. Here's who would be a really bad candidate. Arm people with knowledge and they won't be afraid of things. And most individuals who express fear around these substances do so out of ignorance. And we have the ability, especially in today's information age, to educate people on these things so they know, what is going to be good and or bad for them, whether it's in a clinical sense or even a recreational sense. And I think that leads into another topic of discussion is, legalization on the recreational side versus the medical side for certain substances. But it all comes down to education, Chris, and making sure people know what the hell they're putting in their body, whether that's clinical or recreational.
Got it. Anything the veterans are doing in our community that you think the broader public could benefit from?
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, the the way that a lot of organizations are going about using psychedelics in a responsible manner. Jesse Gould at Heroic Hearts, Veterans Seeking Treatment, Treat Now. There's so many great organizations that are really tackling this problem because we do have a really cohesive veteran community, especially at the higher levels. There's a lot of really great organizations that are busting their hump to bring this to the forefront of everyone's imagination. And I talk to a lot of first responders too, because we treat a ton of police and fire here, and the sentiment that I always hear from them is, man, I wish that our community was like your community, because veterans are always like leading the way and pushing things forward, and the first responder community is so fragmented that it's really hard for them to come together with a united voice. So I think there's a lot of really great things that we can learn from the right organizations who are putting their best foot forward and doing things the right way.
Fantastic. That's all I got. I mean, that was a great way to end it. Is there anything else on your mind you want to say before we wrap up?
Um, I the big thing on my mind is I always like to close these out with a message to people who are struggling, because there's, statistically, someone who's listening to this podcast is going to be someone who's dealing with this stuff and it has not had any resolution and probably doesn't know that these are an option. So if someone's listening to this podcast and you're struggling with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and TBI, know that there is hope. You don't have to feel this way all the time. We have procedures, we have treatments that can help you get out of the hole that you're in. And if you're struggling, all you need to do is look up psychedelics, look up transcranial magnetic stimulation, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, ketamine. These are things that we know work really, really well. And they also work well within the context of the traditional medical establishment. When you blend these things together, we see people get better and stay better incredibly quickly. So if you're struggling, check out some information, do your own research, look up these companies and these organizations, and know that there is a way for you to feel better.
Man, that was well said. And with that, I'm going to thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate your expertise. This was phenomenal in terms of just my own information, but I think everybody who's listening will get a lot of benefit from it too. So thank you for your time. Hope to see you, of course, again in the real life, not just virtual life. But I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Happy to come on anytime. We're doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, you are. And your organization, tell me your organizations again.
Yeah, so my organization is Mind Spa Denver. You can find us at mindspadenver.com. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn's the best place. Sam J. Peterson, comma MBA. I'll come right up. It's got my mug and my headshot on there.
Fantastic. And with that, we're signing off. Thanks, everybody. All right, Hope.
Wow. Man,
That
that
was
was
even better than the first one,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Swear to God,
What
I
an
thought the first
amazing
one was really good,
conversation.
and this was like even better.
Sam,
Sweet.
that was really educational, so informative, and like just the science behind it and the detail about the kind of neuroplasticity and kind of what is happening physiologically in your brain, you know,
So
in the
good,
kind of
man.
normal state, but then also like on these different, what an amazing experience. And also what you were describing in terms of the you know, the sound,
The
what
sound
a sound
table.
bed, and then having the kind of art that comes out of it, and like, wow, how could you not be transformed by
It's
an experience like that, which is literally
Yeah.
like 4D, you know, exposure therapy of like confronting, and it's just boggled my mind. I can only imagine
mind
what an actual
blowing.
person. Man, what a cool conversation. Thank you so much for this. This is
Oh yeah.
so great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, it's really cool that y'all are putting this together. Yeah, it's with the sound table though, it's like to give you a visual of like how immersive it is. I was on the sound table, you know, do it. I had to try it myself before I let my patients do it, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
sure.
science. And I watched a spaceship like made of these pulsing chromatic cubes fly in over the Rocky Mountains at sunset and beam the city of Denver into existence in 4K on the inside of my eyelids.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
And
It was
so you
cool.
remember everything that you experience, like in all of your conversations. You remember it all?
Not I've got a lot of experience with doing IV ketamine. I've been doing it like once every 6 months to just it gets the anxiety monkey off my back. And that little fucker likes to crawl up there and bang his little drum. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, I've been using ketamine clinically for years. So I'm not a good litmus test for that. It's one of the reasons we
Yeah.
do the AI art is because we want to catch them because it's a dissociative anesthetic. So if
Sure.
you're not used to it, you won't remember things. Things will get blurry the longer you are away from that experience. So we really try to capture that.
It's like a
And
dream,
then, you
pretty
know,
much.
yeah, it can be like a dream. And then that's why you want to capture it, get it right with the AI art generator, and then we print that out and give it to them.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's
So
What?
trippy,
they get
man.
something to take home and put on their fridge. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's some
Yeah.
Pink
Yeah.
Floyd, Grateful Dead type of stuff.
Oh, come on. Yeah, that thing, it can we've got we've got hours and hours of custom tracks for it, but it can also play Spotify. And
Very
Yeah.
cool.
you can throw some bangers on there as well.
Rock out to Metallica in there too.
Really
Just like
feel it.
you don't
Yeah.
really want you don't really want instrumentals with ketamine.
Sure.
It warps your perception a little bit too much. It makes the notes longer than they should be, and it kind of screws with you. Um,
Whoa.
reggae works well though, like and no words
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
also another key piece. So
Sure.
there, you know, it's really interesting, like creating these experiences for different drugs because every drug is different. Like with
Yeah.
psilocybin, words are good, total instrumental's great, but with ketamine, it's like you almost want these like elongated, longer um, tones that have less of a crescendo. It just kind of helps guide the process. It's
Sure.
like if you imagined every drug almost having like a frequency, like a waveform, like ketamine would be long and slow.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I can see how
Interesting.
different kind of beats or like tonality could influence what your experience of that, you
Yeah.
know.
And like
Uh,
we're using Sylvegio frequencies too. So those
yeah.
naturally have a calming effect on the nervous system.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it really helps with trauma. Like if someone's got a lot of trauma, sticking them in a chair, giving them an eye mask and some headphones, and like leaving the room is the worst way to do. And
Yeah.
that's the standard of care.
It
Yeah.
So
is.
yeah, but when
I gotta,
you give yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
No,
also thought
go.
it was really interesting your perspective on, you know, in response to Chris's question about, you know, do we think, you know, federal structure would be a positive thing for this. And I thought your response to that was so interesting and kind of antithetical to what we would think, and that, you're going to lose that level of intimacy and, the magic of the experience if it becomes hyper-regulated and kind of structured around a federal model.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting change in perspective from what we had in our last conversation, and really kind of flips,
what's your last conversation say? Who'd you interview?
He was a lobbyist.
Yeah.
So was it Charlie Panfil? Are you familiar with Charlie?
Never heard of him.
I met him at a Mental Health America conference, but he's a lobbyist. He doesn't come off as sleazy though. But he said stuff like, I know, that's
rare animal, but a lobbyist is not sleazy.
As soon as you said,
first thing I told Hope,
lobbyist, that's exactly where I went.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I think. I was like, Hope I found this one guy, but he's not sleazy.
And they're thinking, right.
He talked about stuff like research and programs and kind of training for providers and clinicians, even if it's training for how to screen, screen as the first thing and then refer to a specialized place. So I think there's value in both.
In both perspectives, completely.
As you were talking about Oregon, I was kind of thinking, well, it kind of sucks for people in Oregon to be the guinea pigs. And
it's really interesting. Like, I think that really enriches the conversation and the kind of, seeing this in a sequence, that you're going to get these different perspectives, because all of them are completely valid and get you to kind of think of this from a completely different lens. And I think that just, really enriches this conversation. So
like, if I had my magic wand, how I would do it, like kind of creating I'm always on a mission to create the ultimate treatment protocol. So, I would put someone through, let's take someone who has complex PTSD with childhood trauma and TBI. I would not throw them into psychedelics immediately, at least classical psychedelics. I would put them through, a structured program that included, ketamine, but an elongated dosing model. So they're starting off low and then stepping into it over 4 to 6 sessions. So decreasing that inflammation, putting them into hyperbaric. So we're healing the brain, putting them into the TMS. We're giving them more executive control, completing that entire program over 45 days, testing them on both ends. And then if they're, good to go, and we're like, oh, cool, we've seen drastic increases in executive function. Like for us, the average increase in executive function, if someone does that whole program, is for TBI patients, 125% increase in executive function. Yeah. So now we've taken someone who's a liability. If you stick them in the ayahuasca circle, you're like, oh shit, are they going to have a fucking freak out?
You never know.
Dude, it's not fun it is not fun when that happens, man. Someone's like, when they don't know where they are, they don't know who they are. It's a 5 to 12 hour long episode. Not fun.
That's a lot.
So I put them through the regenerative medicine protocol, and then you put them through, a program that includes psychedelics and has that pre, post, and then ongoing support, so they really can change their mind, change their neural pathways, change their behavior.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'd love to see the stats, the outcomes, and over the time, what does that mean kind of over a lifetime? Yeah, I think that's
not
really
lifetime,
compelling
a
information.
couple of years right now.
Yeah.
They're case studies, but we're rolling pretty hard on fundraising right now, so we can build this out even bigger. I also help develop an intranasal stem cell protocol, so we can use hyperbaric to upregulate your natural stem cell production. We can take those stem cells out, we can stick them wherever we want, including your brain.
Right.
So we're gonna be able to do all of that. I want to be able to, the goal here is within 45 days, completely transform someone's life from not only mental health, but getting into chronic pain and regenerative medicine as well.
Awesome.
My goodness.
If I can help with that, let me know. I don't know a ton of rich people that are potential investors, but if I can help share stuff, do whatever, I'm happy to do that too.
Like, share, subscribe, Chris. Like, share, subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe. So Hope, I know you and I have to go. You want to talk a little
Yeah,
bit
we've
about
got
the
to
path
bounce.
forward?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to talk about the path forward, Hope?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm gonna take this episode, slice and dice it a little bit. But I honestly I don't think that it will need a lot of editing. I thought it was a really
Yeah.
incredible conversation. So really, really excited about it. But again, looking to get it to about 25, 30 minutes. And then we'll pass along the recording to you, see if you have any thoughts or feedback. And then we'll be, we have a couple of episodes in the hopper, but then a couple more, I think, down the road. So we're not quite sure yet in terms of timing and release and kind of, what that will look like, but we'll definitely keep you in the loop as we know more.
Broad strokes. Like, is this, you thinking like a month out, 2 months, 3 months?
Probably 2 months or so, probably in, fall timeline, October.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think we can make that work.
Yeah, I'm trying to get in front of our client and kind of put some of these things in front of our client to stimulate them saying, yes, AG Associates do a national strategy for ketamine. In which case, I'd love to have you as a consultant, and we can bring it in a more formal way. But they've been taking their time to do it, and it's getting annoying. So we're trying to be a little proactive with it, because as you know, this could be a good place to be with both Health and Human Services and the VA, because both secretaries are talking about exploring this topic.
Dude, there's the VA is already good to go on ketamine. It's really just the easiest way to like make this ubiquitous is to reduce and this is also like taking care of suicidality as well, reduce the antidepressant requirements for these treatments like TMS. It's the most effective non-drug treatment for major depressive disorder that exists, bar none. You have to fail, per the VA, per TRICARE, 3 antidepressant meds. Why the hell are we doing that? So pharmaceutical companies can make money 3 times before you do something that works? No, unsubscribe. Like,
I have a
left.
friend that does it. Private insurance is the same thing. You have to unsuccessfully it's the same way, or they won't pay for it.
It's a complete racket.
Sam, is this treatment, is your service covered by insurance? Okay. It is. And not just VA benefits, but normal insurance.
So we're a network with United, Cigna, Aetna, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, TRICARE, TriWest, Medicare, Champ VA.
Okay. Sure.
They will cover medication management, they'll cover TMS, and they'll cover talk therapy. The hyperbaric they won't cover yet. And IV ketamine they won't cover. They will cover Spravato, the nasal ketamine,
the spray,
which is less effective. It's only 50% bioavailability. It's just Johnson & Johnson had a couple wheelbarrows full of money. So different TED Talk. There's already pathways here. It's just some of our services are cash pay and some are covered. With our TRICARE program though, and this is once TRICARE gets their head out of their ass, like this TriWest thing has been awful. When they switched over to TriWest, dude, been waiting 8 months to get my new psychiatrist panel, and it's put a halt on everything. But with our TRICARE program, if someone, because they reimburse much higher than the other companies, if someone gets in for TMS under TRICARE, we give them the hyperbaric and the ketamine for free.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then we collect the data. So,
awesome.
Jeez.
It's the best TRICARE program in the country.
That's awesome, man. Well, if we tell you we're coming out to Colorado, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised.
Come on down.
What a pleasure.
Denver's lovely.
Yeah. Well, we better get going, man. I really do appreciate it. I'll be in touch. And as we progress with the with all the stuff, I'll let you know.
Right on, guys. Well, thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you.
You bet.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate
We'll connect on LinkedIn.
Right on.
All right.
Bye.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.